Welcome, Kemosabe. I'm Detective Lloyd Gross, and this is the Strangler Puzzle Identification episode of the Anti-Strangling Task Force. All cases are solved with logic.
All cases are solved with logic.
This is the central formula to deciphering all the Scranton Strangler puzzles. Identifying a Scranton Strangler puzzle is part of the challenge. It's not just about solving the puzzle, but finding it, and both of these objectives form one challenge. Logic is used to achieve both objectives. Some examples where logic can be applied effectively are paradox, inconsistency, anomaly, peculiarity, and coincidence. We're going to start with paradox. Paradox forms its own motif throughout the show. It is also given a moment of prominence when Dwight is talking about Jim being his own worst enemy.
Jim is my enemy, but it turns out that Jim is also his own worst enemy. And the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So Jim is actually my friend. But because he is his own worst enemy, the enemy of my friend is my enemy. So actually, Jim is my enemy. But
paradox can be simply defined as a statement with contradictory ideas. A good example of a paradoxical statement is, I'm lying. Well, if I'm lying, then the statement must be true. But if it's true, then I must be lying. But if I'm lying, then it must be true. And this is a classic paradoxical statement. A paradox manifests when a contradictory statement is investigated and turns out to be true or well-founded. Most, if not all, of the Office characters are paradoxical to a large degree, but there is no better example than Michael Scott. From now on, this will be termed the Michael Scott paradox. Now, we know we have a motif related to Michael being a genius, the interpretation of which is simply he is a genius. However, everything that he does in the show appears to be nothing short of stupid. He photoshops his face onto Carol's family Christmas card. He promises college tuition to a class of 5th graders and drives his car into a lake. There is no shortage of stupid things that Michael Scott does. However, the motif points us in the direction of genius. And to put it in a paradoxical way, Michael Scott is an idiot and a genius. And at first glance, the statement seems contradictory. But when assessing paradox, the statement ends up becoming true. Therefore, all the stupid things that Michael does also have to be genius. The Michael Scott paradox is an excellent way of identifying the Scranton Strangler mysteries. If every stupid thing he does is genius, we can then apply logic and hypothesize how that seemingly stupid action is actually genius. For this example, we're going to look at his relationship with Carol. Michael does a number of things which are relatively shocking with Carol. He tells her that a Diwali is a dress-up or Halloween type party, and she comes to the Diwali dressed as a cheerleader. Then he asks her to marry him, and then the crescendo, Michael photoshops his face into a family photo on the Skeezens Greetings Christmas card. Now, the first part of the Michael Scott paradox is established. It's undeniable that all these things are nothing short of stupid. However, we now need to apply logic and ask ourselves, how could this also make him a genius? Well, let me share a hypothesis with you, the foundation of which is simply he wants to end the relationship, but he wants a no-fault breakup. He wants the relationship to end at Carol's request. So his first strategy is to embarrass her. He tells her Diwali is a Halloween party and she comes dressed as a cheerleader. She's embarrassed. She's obviously a little bit angry. However, she stays and she doesn't break up with Michael. Michael then raises it up a notch. He asks her to marry him.
Carol? Carol Stills? I would like you to do me the honor of making me your husband.
Oh, Michael.
An incredibly awkward, embarrassing, and cringe-worthy moment. She's shocked. She's embarrassed. She's left questioning the relationship, but she still doesn't break up with him. Michael Scott has underestimated Carol. Next time, he will estimate her. He goes back to the drawing board. Neurons going at Mach 5. Michelangelo himself sculpts with his bare hands a masterpiece, a plan that will not fail.
Ago with my kids and my ex-husband.
Yes, but what you didn't realize at the time was that I was with you, in a sense. I was in your heart and next to your kids. What?
This is so weird.
Okay.
But, I don't know how to deal with this thing and the proposal. And I don't think things are gonna work out with us.
No. Finish her! No, Carol, you walk out that door and it is over.
I know.
Michael Scott wins. Impressive.
Michael Scott is responsible for creating the greatest breakup without fault strategy in the history of human civilization. If you think there's a better one, put it in the comments. Michael Scott is a genius. So the paradox is now proven true. Michael is an idiot because all these things he's done are stupid, but he's also a genius. Now, how does this lead us to the Scranton Strangler Puzzles? Well, the next thing we need to do, guys, is to ask the question: why, who, what, when, where, and how? The first question to arise instinctually is usually why. Now, one reason could be that Carol has kids, Michael wants kids, right? It makes sense. However, it doesn't explain the surrounding circumstances. I mean, this method of breakup is a shotgun method. In other words, he wants it done quickly. This is a foolproof, surefire method. So we need to consider timing a little bit in this case, which I guess brings us to the when. When does all this happen? Well, she breaks up with him the day before he's meant to be going to Sandals, Jamaica. And he ends up going with Jan on this trip. Now, you could start to question, well, is it because he wanted to go with Jan? Well, it's not a bad hypothesis in the first instance, but ultimately where the paradox is pointing to is the trip to Jamaica. Even if we apply this temporary hypothesis that he wanted to go with Jan, well, why? What is so important about this trip that he wants to go with Jan? And there's certainly a little bit of coincidence here in the timing, but we're going to cover coincidence last. So ultimately, the Michael Scott paradox has now pointed us to the episode Back from Vacation. Now, at this stage, this is just a lead. We have a lead that's revealed to us via the paradox. We still haven't found the puzzle. We've just been pointed in a direction. Which brings us to inconsistency. Inconsistency can be defined as behavior and motivations that change in some way. In my view, it has rarely been questioned how it is and why it is that Michael went to Jamaica. I want to remind you of a couple of things, guys. This is the guy that's never driven his car to Mount Washington, that never goes anywhere, complains to David Wallace how much he's sacrificed in his life for his job. Yet, this is the first time he's going overseas. I mean, it seems to me like it'd be a whole lot easier to go for a drive than to fly to Jamaica. So he hasn't done the small things he's wanted to do in life, and all of a sudden he's going on a trip to Jamaica. Not only that, Michael is in the show for 7 seasons. He never goes on vacation again. The only other trip that comes to my mind is his trip to Canada, right? And that was at the request of David Wallace to have a meeting with a client. So he never goes on vacation again. And this is how this particular inconsistency is sort of slipped in by the creators. It's once you go through 7 seasons, if you look backwards and you ask the question, well, he never goes on vacation again, right? What's so significant about this trip considering he never goes anywhere, right? So inconsistency is another way that you can uncover the mysteries. So continuing to follow our lead, we now need to watch this episode, and we need to watch carefully. The script will guide us and provide us with the clues and direction we need. So are there any clues in this episode that make any sort of suggestion? Yes, in the deleted scenes there are some very telling moments. Pam shows us a postcard that Michael supposedly sent her from Jamaica.
And this time, I'm Jamaican him crazy. I don't know how far away he thought he was because he put $10 worth of stamps on this.
This is what now brings us to anomaly. Anomaly can be defined as a deviation from what is regarded socially normal. Nobody sends postcards with $10 worth of stamps. In fact, the postcard is the cheapest method of postage available in the world. You can be at 2 separate corners of the earth, and I still don't think it's going to cost you any more than $1 to send a postcard. So this is an anomaly. It doesn't cost that much, and nobody would do that. Now, this does link back into the Michael Scott paradox. Because remember, every stupid thing he does is genius. So the anomaly has sort of linked back to that. And we can now start to sort of decipher this postcard, both from the fact that it's an anomaly and making sense of it via the Michael Scott paradox. So how could we interpret this postcard? Well, in my interpretation, the genius of it is he's trying to send a message to us. I went further than Jamaica. More stamps equals more distance. But we also need to look at the picture on the stamp. And in this case, it's a picture of Falmouth Courthouse in Jamaica. It's a court. So the inference here is I've gone somewhere far away and I've done something very illegal. Now that we have a basic hypothesis, we need to find some evidence to support this theory that he wasn't in Jamaica. So do the creators provide us with any direction that might confirm this idea? The answer is yes.
Michael and Jan together in Jamaica. I guess I would just need a little bit more evidence than seeing it with my own eyes.
Now Ryan repeats this statement.
I don't know if Michael and Jan really went to Jamaica because Michael's way into Photoshop. For example, I never went with him to Egypt.
Now guys, I've said it a million times. What is repetition? Repetition forms a motif. That means the creators are trying to tell us something. So how do we interpret this motif? Very simply, Michael didn't go to Jamaica. That is the message. So now let's think about where we are so far in this puzzle hunting process. The Michael Scott paradox led us to question the timing of his breakup. The inconsistency around the fact that Michael never goes on vacation confirms the suspicion. The anomaly of the postcard led us to the hypothesis that Michael wasn't in fact in Jamaica. And then motif confirms it. So by this stage, it's no longer a lead. You are now onto the puzzle of this episode. And to completely identify it again, we need to ask the questions. Why, who, what, where, when, and how. And really the prime example here is the where. If he didn't go to Jamaica, where did Michael go? I guess we could also ask with who, right? You assume it's with Jan, but in the deleted scenes, Jan doesn't come back with him at the airport, right? So the where and the who are definitely areas to focus on. So we have some direction in this regard. It's further than Jamaica. We can at least come to that conclusion at this point. Well, what about the who? Do we have any information around who else Michael might have gone with on this trip? We have a person of interest by the name of Bevan.
When I was on vacation, I met a man named Bevan. And Bevan takes people parasailing.
This is what leads us to the next point, which is peculiarity. Peculiarity can be defined as a characteristic that is distinctive of a person or a place. Now, Bevan is a person of interest to the anti-strangling task force. Who is Bevan? Michael makes a strong point of confirming his name when Kevin mispronounces it Bouvan.
But, Michael, Bouvan gets to go parasailing every day, and that's fun.
His name is Bevan. And you know what? I'm sure Bevan...
So Michael really wants us to know that he's talking about a guy called Bevan. Now, we could spell this name phonetically as B-E-V-A-N. And in Australia, this name would be pronounced Bevan. But because the show pronounces it Bevan, and I enjoy saying Bevan, we're going to continue saying Bevan. So the name Bevan is of Welsh origin. It is ultimately a name that will be found in the English-speaking world. Now, when Michael first mentions Bevan, he touches his little Jamaican braid. And my interpretation of it thus far, I wouldn't say is entirely solid, but in simple terms, I would say he's trying to get us to question the Jamaican heritage or connection to the name. If we've gotten this far and we know he didn't go to Jamaica, well, we now need to look at where else is the name Bevan used prominently. Remember, logic is the formula. So I went to the website Forebears, and you can search how frequently a name is used in various countries. And there are a number of them. So we need to start to eliminate some of these possibilities before we even look at individual countries. Michael does come back with a tan. Remember, it's tan everywhere, Jan everywhere. And it's December. So in the northern hemisphere, it's winter time. It can't be in the north. He needs to have gone somewhere sunny. It must be in the southern hemisphere. The top 3 places in the southern hemisphere where the name Bevan is used are the following. Ranked at number 1 is New Zealand, number 2 is Australia, and number 3 is South Africa. Now, we can eliminate South Africa because it's actually less prominent per capita than Jamaica. So if we go per 1,000 people, Bevan is used more frequently in Jamaica than it is in South Africa. So it really takes that one off the list. So we're now left with New Zealand and Australia. So is there anything in the show that points us to either one of these countries? To my knowledge, New Zealand is only mentioned once, when Dwight says he's going to walk the trail to Mordor.
If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go?
I can travel anywhere except Cuba, and I will travel to New Zealand and walk the Lord of the Rings trail to Mordor, and then I will hike Mount Doom.
So it's certainly a possibility, but what about Australia? Australia is not only mentioned, but Australia is a strong motif in the show.
Okay, I like your food.
Outback Steakhouse. I'm Australian, mate.
Australia? I have always wanted to go there.
I'm going.
Oh, can I be Australian, mate?
Absolutely.
Hello, mate.
I like ice cream. I need a boyfriend.
I like ice cream too, mate. Alligators and dingo babies.
Unlikely things happen all the time. My best friend in high school, she went to Australia, Canberra, I think, and she met this guy who lived only 2 streets away from her in America.
Say it with an accent. Da-da-da-dundee. Da-dundee. Da-dundee.
Good day, Pomeroo. Could you shoot this off for me?
Yeah.
Australian accent. In celebration of the finalization of my divorce, I got into a case of Australian Reds and... Well, what can't I do, right? I can sing, I can dance,
or can play the banjo.
So the name Bevan is used in Australia. It's December. I can tell you now, I live in Australia. At Christmas time, we are all at the beach. New Year's Day, we are at the beach. We are all sons of beaches down here in Australia. Now, interestingly, not only is Australia mentioned and ultimately forming a motif, but we're even given a city. And that city is Canberra.
Unlikely things happen all the time. My best friend in high school, she went to Australia, Canberra, I think, and she met this guy who lived only 2 streets away from her in America.
Canberra is Australia's capital city, and it is situated between Sydney and Melbourne. It's still very hot in the summer, but it is not close to the beach. Now, the reality is, guys, Canberra is not a vacation city. Right? It's not a bad city, but most tourists are not going to go to Canberra for a vacation. They're more likely to go to one of the capital cities on the coast. You can basically go to every state in Australia and find amazing tourist activities and places to visit. I would say very, very few go to Canberra. I mean, Canberra is a 4-hour drive from Sydney. It would really be that Dwight Schrute type of a tourist who wants to go there. Most of Canberra is based around politics. It's not a vacation city. So this starts to raise questions around whether Michael even went on a vacation. I mean, if we know he didn't go to Jamaica, and we have pretty good evidence to suggest he went to Australia, right? And not only that, we have a city, which is Canberra, right? To me, especially as an Australian, he hasn't gone on a vacation. So again, we have to ask the question, what is he doing? Why is he there? We have to ask all the W's, the 5 W's and the H. We always have to ask the question. And again, logic is the formula, guys. The formula always comes back down to logic and then looking for clues and evidence within the show. The script will lead you there. The puzzle is difficult, not impossible. The evidence is disguised, not hidden. With the application of logic, if your hypothesis is correct, you will find evidence for it. It will be there. Now, this particular episode, again, is not about solving the puzzle, and you can see we still haven't gone the whole way of solving it. I've sort of taken you halfway there. Now, I said I was going to touch on coincidence last. Michael hit the nose with the Skeezen's greetings card right before he was meant to leave on this trip. Right, so our initial hypothesis around why, was it because Carol has kids? Well, that seems pretty unlikely now. Was it because he wanted to go with Jan? Well, there's evidence to suggest Jan wasn't even with him. The timing of that card is coincidental, right? It's too perfectly timed based on when he was leaving to what we currently hypothesize is Australia. There are no coincidences. And I'm not going to go into this point in much detail because it's as simple as that, guys. If you recognize a coincidence, that is immediately an area of interest because there are no coincidences. And on that point, guys, I want to now summarize everything that we've covered. We started with the Michael Scott paradox. But practically speaking, we could likely identify the puzzle of this episode via any one of the means mentioned. Ask the question and you will be led to the puzzle. Remember, understand your characters, understand the plot, understand the script. Make a call and ask the question.
I just want to remind you to stick to the script. It's been proven to work. So, make the call. Say the lines.
And solve the crime. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and join the Anti-Strangling Task Force on Patreon for exclusive episode analysis.